I'm standing here with my law enforcement partners in the Gilgo Task Force to announce the indictment of defendant Rex Andrew Heuermann, 59 years of age.
Just 1 week after the accused Gilgo Beach serial killer is taken into custody, the investigation expands beyond New York into multiple other states, where investigators say the killer may have taken more lives.
It's the most prudent and normal thing to do. If you have known entities of this person being in these places for extended periods of time.
Law&Crime Network sat down with former CIA officer and FBI agent Tracy Walder, who says it's expected that the investigation will stretch beyond Long Island.
One thing if they transited the airport, right? We're not going to necessarily be looking into cold cases, but if they spent a degree of time there, that is the normal investigatory thing to do. Now, it might not be the quickest in terms of investigations that are going to take place because they are cold cases. However, I'm very confident saying that I 100% believe that they will most likely be looked into. Not every single one, obviously, but ones that might match this particular serial killer's MO.
The accused serial killer is 59-year-old Rex Heuermann, a self-proclaimed Long Island native.
Rex Heuermann, I'm an architect, I'm an architectural consultant, I'm a troubleshooter, born and raised on Long Island.
A Manhattan-based architect, Heuermann spoke with YouTube reporters just last year, giving cryptic responses about biding his time and his interactions with other people.
After all those years, what do you think is the most important qualities a person in your position dealing with the DOB must have?
Patience.
That's funny. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. Patience, and I don't like to use the word tolerance, but sometimes you have to. But it's the people, how they're all so different, and how you deal with the people, I think, is one of the more interesting aspects that have come out of this.
Just last Thursday, Heuermann was arrested in connection to the Gilgo Beach murders that date back to 2010. In December of that year, investigators recovered multiple sets of remains along the secluded beach in Long Island. Since that time, a total of 11 sets of remains have been recovered in that same area.
These young women went missing between July of 2007 and September of 2010. They were found in December of 2010 by the Suffolk County Police Department, and then there was nothing, absolutely nothing. For the next 13 years, their cases went unsolved until today.
Heuermann is now charged in the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, who were working as escorts at the time of their murders. He's also the prime suspect in the murder of another escort, Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Suffolk County Sheriff Errol Toulon Jr. tells Law&Crime Network Heuermann could soon face additional charges.
There have been many search warrants that have been executed, which could hopefully help us lead us to more evidence in the three that he's currently under what he's charged for this arrest, the one that's pending, and if there's any other connection to any other murders, we will then be able to charge him on those also.
Since his arrest, investigators have spent multiple days combing through Heuermann's Massapequa Park home on Long Island, reportedly recovering bizarre items like a life-size doll and an arsenal full of guns. Walder says it's likely taking investigators so long to go through the home because of the large amounts of evidence being cataloged.
What I always was looking for, when I issued a search warrant, was anything and everything. And I know that that's the worst answer ever, but that's the truth, because that's the point of a search warrant, right? If you go in saying, I am looking for this DNA evidence, you are going to miss the 5,000 other clues. Look, they're going to approach the scene, though, very methodically. right? And they are going to catalog every single thing that they found, as well as the methods upon which they used to collect it. And what you will see is, I think what you will see ultimately is the receipt of the items that were taken.
But it's specifically DNA evidence that Walder believes investigators will be searching for.
That's really when they make the decision, should I take this notebook? If it doesn't have investigatory value, no. But I might take this hairbrush because it has DNA on it. And that's where you'll start to see the receipt. Most likely, they're going to be looking at things that are forensic value. So they will probably be looking for blood. They will probably be looking for any kind of DNA evidence because they have to also establish that he was there at those times as well. And DNA could potentially put him there. More burner phones, more things that he used to communicate. Also, items of clothing that may have been associated.
It was ultimately DNA evidence that led to Heuermann's arrest.
And once we were able to get some DNA evidence, which we were able to get off the pizza crust, off that and the box, pretty much solidified that we actually had the right person.
According to court documents, investigators recovered a pizza box Heuermann threw away in January 2023. The Suffolk County Crime Lab analyzed a piece of leftover crust connecting it to Heuermann. Investigators also found hairs, likely belonging to both Heuermann and his wife, on the bodies of multiple victims. Officials also confirm his wife was out of the tri-state area when multiple of the murders were committed. Walder says investigators will likely be working to collect DNA from Heuermann's wife, Asa Ellerup, in the Long Island home as well.
Part of what I would imagine they're doing too, quite frankly, because yes, her hair was found on the victims. I don't believe that she killed those victims. I think it was transfer, and that her husband had her hair on her and transferred that onto the victims, or if he's really diabolical, planted it there. And I do think that they will be using that, quite frankly, to exclude her. And her attorneys may also want that, to exclude her from any culpability.
Walder says Ellerup has likely already spoken with investigators.
Her statement would be taken and would be used ultimately as evidence, what she knew, what she didn't know, how she knew, if she knew anything, and when she knew. And I think most likely she is being represented, by counsel now. That would be the prudent thing for her, because like I said, I think her focus is going to be proving that she didn't know. And I believe that she may have not known, but that's something that she's going to have to prove to investigators, and that she's not an accessory or an accessory after the fact. And so I think that's the focus for her right now.
It's also likely some of Ellerup's items are being collected during the investigation, and she probably won't see them anytime soon.
She will not be getting that back anytime. I'm trying to say this in a delicate way, anytime soon. It's not that she deserves that. I don't think that she does. But that is not how it works. I would imagine they are going to hold on to all evidence that was collected through trial, if this goes to trial. And so, that could be a year, right? Less than a year. It really depends on what he does. Ultimately, if he pleads, they're going to get those items back a lot sooner. If they are not related to the investigation, she is entitled to get those items back, and she will. I just don't think it's going to be anytime soon, because it all needs to be processed, and it needs to be processed properly. And if they give that back to her too soon, that becomes contaminated, and then it cannot be admissible.
Ellerup has since filed for divorce from Heuermann. Law&Crime Network reached out to her attorney for a comment, but have not yet heard back. As searches of the couple's Long Island home continue, investigators in Chester County, South Carolina also issue a search warrant for property owned by Heuermann. A statement from South Carolina officials reads in part, quote, "The Chester County Sheriff's Office has and will continue to work closely with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Suffolk County law enforcement authorities during this very important and arduous investigation." According to court documents, South Carolina officials notably recovered a Chevrolet Avalanche belonging to Heuermann at that home. Years prior, a witness reported seeing a similar truck near Costello's home in New York before her disappearance.
Theoretically, the FBI would gather all of that information from them and then be distributing it out to the other jurisdictions. Now, I don't know how they're going to proceed in this case. I can't, obviously tell you for certain, but typically that would be because Suffolk County is probably quite busy, I would imagine, processing all of this and ensuring that he answers for these charges. My guess would be that they would most likely, I don't want to say pass this off because that's not what they're doing, but delegate that work out to the FBI to help them liaise with all these different law enforcement agencies.
As to what items investigators will likely recover in South Carolina, Walter says FBI agents will likely focus on DNA and burner phones.
Those burner phones that he had, and he had several that we know of. We know the ones that he used to communicate with the victims, but what other numbers did he call? What other area codes did he call? And so I think that those are going to be the two places where I think they're going to start. Obviously his DNA, clearly, because now we have it, right? Before it was just genealogical, and that's how they were putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So now that's going to be entered into CODIS, right? Because we know before it wasn't in CODIS because he didn't have any arrests in the past that would have mandated that he provided DNA. So that's the first step. That's going to be entered into CODIS.
But an investigation like this will take time.
I don't want to say that's going to be an easy thing because searching through CODIS actually takes time. It can take days and it can take months. But that's going to be the easiest thing, the easiest tool that these local law enforcement are going to have. That they can go back. The other thing that I think is interesting that I think we need to think about, because sometimes we don't, a lot of local PDs and even state PDs have a backlog of processing of rape kits. And if they were victims who were murdered and sexually assaulted, those rape kits may not have been processed yet. And that is like this other layer that I don't think a lot of folks are talking about yet. But if local PDs are not receiving the money to process that backlog of rape kits, that could be problematic because then that DNA is not loaded into CODIS, and we're not going to get that match, right, that we talk about.
Officials in Las Vegas, where Heuermann owned 2 timeshare condos, are also now taking a look at unsolved cases.
I would think one of the first places they will start is with unsolved cases around the time of him being, very active in Las Vegas, particularly those with sex workers. I think that that's something that they obviously will start with in terms of narrowing down the type or the profile of his victim. But we don't know because there's individuals that were not sex workers that were found in the Gilgo Beach area as well. And so I think it'll be interesting, but I would imagine that's where they're probably going to start.
While it may not be common for a serial killer to travel to commit murders, Walter says it's possible connected victims could be found across the country.
I think it depends on the means that the serial killer has and the purpose upon which they have to do this traveling. If you look at Gacy, for example, we know that he mostly stayed, in his little area, and it was more crimes of opportunity that he was committing. But we know in terms of other ones, even Bundy traveled, right? The Green River Killer traveled a little bit. And so I don't think it's that unheard of, particularly when he had, this land in South Carolina and this timeshare in Vegas. He had a reason to be there and he had the means to do that. So I don't want to say it's completely common, but I don't want to say it's never happened either. I think it's probably 50-50 in this case.
Right now, Heuermann is being held in the Suffolk County Jail without bond. He's pleaded not guilty to all charges and is due back in court on August 1st. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.